Alright, welcome to another nature walk and talk. This one's going to be kind of interesting, and it's going to be about how I gained weight, how I built muscle doing so, it's mostly building muscle, and how I kind of changed my perspective on what I view as healthy. Okay, so I have a bunch of notes written down about some good tips and kind of like how I kind of made this happen, what I do, the regimen that I follow, and it goes into, eating what I eat, but also like how I eat and how frequent, and then on top of that, how I build appetite, which is really important because for someone like me, and if you relate to this, I have a problem building appetite. I've always had sort of an appetite problem, but a lot of it went into kind of being afraid of being unhealthy. Okay, so before I get into the list of everything, I'll just explain two really important things that help me with this. And one is being open-minded to trying new things, like trying new food and new diets, and seeing, kind of open my mind to, doing research, backing it with logic, but saying, okay, let me try this new diet. And it looks like a lot of people and research and stuff support this, let's say eating more meat-based and stuff. Let me try that out, see how that works for me. And I've done a lot of experimentation. So that's kind of just the idea, being open-minded to trying new things. I'm the type of person that doesn't think one size fits all, that one diet fits all. I think we live different lifestyles. We all kind of live differently. So I think your diet is according to that. But that's the number one thing, is just being open to trying new things and seeing what works for you, what you feel better eating, not just at the moment, but in the long run too. And then the second one kind of seems a little random, but it's not. And it's basically I did a parasite cleanse. And to boil it down, what I did was I did a garlic, wormwood, black walnut, and clove, like grounded clove in capsule. And I was taking that for a while, some months. And it completely changed my digestive system and my diet, and mentally, I feel like a fog got lifted off my brain. Long story short, I did find out I had some parasites, and I don't need to really get into how I found out, but I did. And then I did the parasite cleanse for a while, a natural one, and it completely changed what I also crave for food. So that really did something personally to me, and those are the two things that I did that really changed the game for me. Okay, so getting into some of these notes that I wrote, and to kind of summarize what's going on is that I've always had a very slim body type, super thin, but I had basically an eating disorder for years. I was scared to eat unhealthy, and this means that I was going lengths of eating only vegetables and maybe a little bit of chicken, no seasonings whatsoever, and then making sure I didn't eat that much so I thought I would just get fat and unhealthy. And I was always scared of that. And it actually kind of took over my life and my eating habits. So basically the result of doing this is that I was super skinny. I was always super skinny. I kind of had what I would call the SpongeBob muscles. I don't know if you could if I could find a picture, I'll put on this video of the SpongeBob when he's flexing. And then he had literally nothing. So that was kind of funny. And this is not a brag or anything, but I have more than what I used to. No SpongeBob muscle anymore. I actually got something to show, something there, which was never the case before. Okay, so I kind of had to, like I said, become open-minded, try new diets, new foods, see what worked for me, also see what worked for other people. And then, as you'll see from this video, I've kind of been able to let go and learn along the way that, I can still exercise a bunch and remain pretty healthy, and I can, I pushed the envelope basically, and I did some bulking where I necessarily wasn't eating completely healthy, but I'm gaining some weight, and then I can eat healthy and, maintain the muscle. That's the whole idea, at least. So basically, in all, to sum it up, it's been a big learning experience to change what I view as healthy and to kind of let go of being obsessed with eating healthy, 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 and sometimes seeing that, okay, if I really want a goal like gaining some muscle, maybe I'm gonna have to eat some extra cheese and stuff like that. And that's pretty funny because before all this, I never ate any dairy, ever stayed away from it. And yeah, to sum it up, it actually caused stomach problems before I did my parasite cleanse. So that's why those were those two things that I mentioned as some of those really important things. So basically when I started all of this, I was 135 pounds when I tried to actually start gaining weight here. So that's what this video is about. We're getting into this. And I'm gonna start talking about my diet and stuff like that, what I eat, all that, blah, blah, blah. So I started 135. And before that, I was actually around probably like 120, to be honest. And I was really, I'm like 5'11" right now. I was probably like 5'9" then or something, which is pretty tall. And, 120 pounds. I was like super skinny. And, like people were asking like, are you okay? Did like something happen? Are you all right? And I was just basically would tell them, no, like I'm just trying to eat super healthy. And I thought that I was super healthy. I was kind of I was in a mindset that what I was doing was super healthy, and I lost all my muscle that I built eating a bunch of bad, unhealthy food. And I was like, oh, I'll just, gain it back eating healthy. And, to really sum it up, I was eating vegan. And for me, just stopped working because I would get stomach problems eating the amount of food I had to eat. And I just couldn't, kept losing muscle. And I ended up basically looking anorexic, to be honest. And then I was like, okay, this is bad. So I started going to the gym, started eating food, and what I could maintain was that 135. So that was actually what I hit after going to the gym for probably some years and actually eating healthy finally, and kind of, getting over eating extremely super duper duper healthy. But I had some bad things to where, like I was saying, I never wanted to eat very much. I thought I'd get overweight. And then I would skip meals and stuff and think no big deal. If I was working or I wanted to get something done, I would just skip a meal or two and I'd feel horrible. And I'd do that all the time. And looking back, no wonder it was so hard for me to gain weight. Okay, so I just had to kind of get over a lot of that stuff. And then for me, I need to eat a lot as I'm trying to gain weight. I think most people do, actually. You need to eat a lot when you're gaining weight. It's not easy just to do it, and you kind of have to think about it all the time. You have to plan it. Okay, when's my next meal going to be? How am I going to make it happen? Okay, so there's a lifestyle change that goes on here, and this doesn't happen overnight. You're going to have to work at it, and I'm sure if I could do it, mostly anyone can. I think that's what happened. Is I'm making this video because some people are asking me, what are you doing? How are you eating? What's your regimen? You're with all this to build muscle and stuff, because I've been posting some progress and I've been building some serious muscle lately, and some people saw that and they were like, whoa, so what are you doing? So here I am making this video. Hopefully they can sit back, someone can sit back, listen to this, learn from it, okay? Because I wrote down a lot of notes here. So to basically sum up the whole weight thing, I could only maintain 135. What I thought was eating a bunch of food, going to the gym a lot. I didn't realize how much food I was going to have to eat in my near future, though. So now I'm actually 195, which is a weight that I don't know if I'd ever see myself getting if I ever would have expected. And I'm maintaining it too, to where, I've gone on went on basically a 48-hour fast, kind of. I went on a 24-hour fast and ate half a sandwich and some smoothie. And then I went on another 24-hour fast. And then I was still 195 after. And when I started, I think I was 197 or something. So I'm maintaining that weight, even on a fast. And I don't even know how that makes sense, really. But I am. And that's how I know that I'm maintaining the weight, because I've been doing this periodically. I fast throughout it, which will actually be part of the video. Some of the notes I wrote. Guess I need to catch my breath here. Whew. Okay, so now I'm going to get into these notes of what I actually eat, how I do this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I think one of the number one tips when I started all this, talking to one of my buddies, he's like a real good at building muscle. I consider him a bodybuilder. I don't know if he would, but I think me and most of his friends would. And I'm like, yo, dude, so like, how do you make this happen? And what do you do? And he's telling me, like, the number one tip is to eat a lot and to kind of like look at food as more important than working out and hitting the weights. And then he's telling me, like, this doesn't mean like you just stop one of them. Like, you got to keep it consistent. You know, you got to keep working out and all that. But if you're going to skip an eating day and not eat, or skip a gym day and not lift any muscle, he was saying, don't skip the gym days, or don't, oh my gosh, don't quote that. Don't skip the eating day. He's saying you need to eat, okay, you need to eat and make sure you don't skip the eating day, but you can skip the lifting the weight day and you'll still see the muscle development and the progress as long as you've been, you know, keeping it consistent. You lifted like a week ago within that or something. And I'm like, okay, so it's not as hardcore as I thought. I thought, you know, I was going to have to go every single other day at least, maybe every day, and eat like a monster. And I started throughout this kind of realizing it's not as crazy as that, but if you focus on eating a bunch of food every day, that's where you are really able to see the progress, because then when you go to the gym, hit it really hard, not only do you have more energy when you eat a bunch of protein, I've noticed, but then you actually see more results. Okay, you the next week you're like, oh, I actually feel like I'm building some muscle from that last workout. Okay, so make sure you eat a lot of food. And what have I eaten to make this happen? And I would say eating a lot of dairy. I heard one person say if that they were actually a doctor. Well, it was a comment on like a YouTube video or something, but it helped me a lot. And they said they're a doctor or something like that, and they were dealing with people that had weight issues or something like that, actually not eating enough, being underweight, like me. I was probably looking up a video on that or something. And they said that they recommend if they weren't eating meat to do that, which I started doing, I wasn't doing before. And they said, you know, have some dairy if you actually want to, you know, if you want to build some muscle and you have a hard time doing that. And, you know, the main thing is putting on weight here, if you want to put on some weight. So I started doing that. And, you know, to push the envelope and to really build a lot of muscle and gain the weight that I have, I'd say I've had to eat a lot of dairy. I've had to eat big portions of food. And, you know, with the butter, putting, you know, large portions of butter and whole bunch of butter, extra cheese probably. Just putting a whole bunch of extra cheese. And then try incorporating some milk, but, you know, back off if you have stomach issues. But the cheese and butter you can go a long way with, because it's easy to digest. It's almost like slightly processed a bit if you think about it. And in its form, it just seems to digest a lot easier, for me at least. And then if you can like get some whey protein and, you know, mix that into some milk, like some whole milk or something, that'll do a lot for you. And since it's so protein dense, it won't really like fill you up as much as like a meal where you're eating all the food with all the calories. You're going to get a whole bunch of protein, but you could have that like after you ate a good night's worth of food and not feel overloaded most of the time. And then that's where a lot of this goes into, is actually taking breaks and stuff like that. So make sure in between you eat in between big meals and eating all this butter and extra cheese and stuff, if you're going to be doing that, the protein shakes, the milk and the whey protein, blah blah, make sure you kind of back off and wait a while before your next meal. And when you're, let's say, getting into the bulk, maybe you're going to keep eating, maybe you're going to eat a bunch. Make sure you don't do that too much though. So the whole point is make sure you take some breaks, give yourself time in between meals. And the main thing is, if you start noticing stomach issues, you're like, geez, I don't feel so good from this, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Well, just don't eat for like 8 hours or something, even if it's during the day. And then maybe the next day only eat a little bit. And then after that, your hunger my hunger when I do that starts to come back big time. Like, okay, I'm all hungry again. And then if you're not going to the gym and working out, that's what you also got to do. You got to at least, like, here, go out on a nice big walk, go to the gym, maybe hit some heavy weights, and like I was saying, maybe don't eat so much. You'll be hungry again. So I've actually been doing fasting, and that's what helps for me. Is I would really recommend that you do fasting and intense exercise to influence intense hunger for meals, and for those really big meals, lots of food, and then the excessive calories. I'd also say get into the habit of this, and then push the amount of food and calories you can eat until you reach a limit. So get into the habit of kind of taking a big break, eating those really big meals. Then maybe after that break, that whole day and the next day, you eat a whole bunch of extra food, and then you kind of keep in track of how much you ate. Okay? Let's say you ate 2 eggs in the morning, and then you had a protein shake, and then you had 2 burgers for lunch, and then you had a steak and potatoes and for dinner with a ice cream for dessert or something. Let's just say that. And then after that, you feel like, geez, that's like the most I could do. And I'll just say, let's say you did that 2 days. Do that day 1 and day 2 after you took a break. And okay, like the whole situation here is like you're not used to doing that. That's like a new feat. Like, okay, that's the most amount of food I've ever eaten in a day, and I did it twice. I feel completely full now, maybe even a little bloated. And that's your goal, though. You're going to try to figure out a way to get your body to eat that and not feel like it's too much. Make it feel like it's just enough. And once you start doing that enough, then that will feel like maybe it's not even enough. You're still going to feel hungry after that. And you will not believe how am I still hungry after this? And this is if you're following the intense exercise and the also fasting protocol that I have, at least it works for me. And with that, you're fasting once a week at least. And if you don't do it once a week, you should do it every other week. So like every 14 days, you should throw in 1 day where you don't really eat anything for 18 hours to 24 hours. I think 24 hours would basically be like the most you have to do. So when you start all this, you might feel kind of sick and stuff. You're not used to starving yourself, and it may not actually feel good. And I think a lot of people don't really get into fasting because when you first start, if you're not used to it, it doesn't really feel good. And it feels like, what am I doing? Like, I'm starving my body. I feel weak. But I'll tell you, like, after my body's adapted to fasting, I actually feel great during a fast. I feel extra strong and extra fast and focused. And I think my body's learned that it's a good thing. But before, I think my body's just like, what are you doing? You're starving yourself. So I need to really throw in why I fast too. I started noticing that eating all this food, I'd feel kind of sickly, and I wouldn't be able to keep eating the food, and that's where I'd kind of stop doing all this, and I wouldn't be able to keep doing this. And then I was at the protein or vitamin store and stuff, actually getting some creatine, and the guy there was like, hey, I do a fast once a week, and he's saying if he doesn't do that, then his digestive system's kind of feels messed up, eating all the food and stuff like that. He said it really helped him. So I was like, no way. And he's like real like I have to do this. If I don't do it, like I won't feel very good. And I'd have to say I'm basically the same way now, because it helps so much, and it helps build back the appetite again when I'm not feeling so good, and it feels like this is a little too much. Helps me get back into the flow again. And if I do that once a week, then I don't really have the problems eating all this food and feel like it's too much or anything. And of course, I got a little bit took some time getting used to all that. And it actually took some years slowly eating up extra food, extra portions, adapting. I've not really been in a whole rush, but it took a while. Whoa. Okay, I'm going to keep talking. That's kind of the end of that point, but this looks kind of gnarly, yo. It's like walking by and like, I think I've walked here before, but I haven't recognized this because it's never looked all nasty like this. Whoa. Kind of gnarly, bro. Okay, so that's basically why I fast. It helps me not feel sick, not like I'm eating too much and get all bloated and all that. So, like I was saying, once again, I fast for a minimum of 18 hours, and then a max probably like 24 hours. You can push it more if you really want to, but I don't know if there's like a lot of proof that pushing past like just the regular 18-24 hour fast has extra benefits. And, you know, the benefits of fasting are actually pretty darn controversial. But if you look into it, there are some pretty good benefits that people think. And one of them is how when you don't eat, the old cell waste goes away, and then the new cell waste, or your new cells, get rebuilt. And I can't think of the exact name of what that's called. I always forget what that's called. But basically, that is kind of something that's hard to prove. It's very hard to prove if your body is in that state. So a lot of people, it's basically just a theory that when you fast, your body goes into that state and it does all that good stuff. And one of the reasons is because the symptoms of that thing that I can't remember the name of is that you feel like you're really, you feel like you're starving, you feel weak and stuff like that. Whatever the symptoms are, it's basically the symptoms of like starving. So you're starving and you feel kind of sickly and you think, okay, maybe I'm going into this state where all this stuff's happening, but the fact is it's hard to prove that you're in that state, so it's basically just a darn theory. So it's a controversial thing. Some people think it's all woohoo. Some people think there's really something to it. I myself think there's something to it because I've done it myself, and I think a lot of the people who are saying you got to try this and there's something to it, they practice it themselves and they've noticed benefit, okay? I think something that I've mentioned to help people understand my perspective of fasting is that I think that our ancestors and even our not too long ago relatives, and also in certain parts of the country you can still see this, they don't have access always to food every single day. They don't always have refrigerators. A lot of people are, let's say if they're growing their own food, they have to grow a bunch of food, and during the winter, if it gets cold and harsh, they have to do a bunch of canning of their food that they're growing, and they have to survive off that. And, you know, I don't think there's always, I don't think people always are able to eat a great 3 meals a day like we are today and go to the store anytime you want and get that meal and those extra calories and stuff like that. So, you know, there's no like proof to this. I don't know if there is, but my whole thinking is that I think our ancestors probably didn't always have the ability to eat, and I think this is somewhere in what we, you know, use. Okay, so I'm running out of space actually on my camera, so I'm gonna have to wrap this up. But basically, you got to build up to both fasting and eating those big meals, and it's something you have to work up towards. And you don't want to push either of them too hard, but you kind of just want to build up to your goal. Try to, you know, of course, when you want to see progress, you have to push past where you are, so you got to keep pushing things, growing, and that's what you're going to have to do. But the whole thing here is make sure to take breaks. Don't worry about things too much. Get plenty of rest, sleep, you know, take some lazy days, it doesn't matter, and don't push it too hard. The whole point is, though, don't miss out on the eating regimen. Don't miss out on eating those big meals and the goal that you have of eating the certain amount of food per day. Okay. So you always got to keep the eating consistent. You could kind of be lazy, skip some working out days, and, you know, you'll kind of rest, and maybe I get stronger actually sometimes when I rest for a week, get back to the gym. I wouldn't, you know, rest more than a week. I start to get kind of weaker. But when you feel sick and you can't build an appetite for the day, just try fasting for a day. Don't work out too hard during the fast. Kind of chill out a bit. The next day, you know, eat light, but you want to exercise like real intensely if you want to build back up your appetite. And then your appetite's going to come back like crazy. You'll feel really good. You'll be ready to keep doing all this, not give up. Okay, so like I was saying, basically, the eating part is super important with all this. And then making sure that if you really want to gain the weight, for me, the tip that's really worked is incorporating lots of dairy, lots of cheese, lots of butter, try doing a good amount of milk too, if your stomach can handle that. Okay, and then I'm going to get into a really good tip here. Okay, now I'm going to get into 2 additional sort of tips here and then kind of wrap all this up. So the first tip would be look up recipes from people that are, how do you say this in the best way? You know, kind of like big people that are really big, you know, have a lot of weight to them. Some of these people have cooking channels. Okay, so if you follow these channels, if you look at their videos and you see the recipes, they'll show you how to make crazy calorie-dense meals. Okay, but make sure you don't eat too many of these or too often, because you're going to feel kind of bloated and, you know, you won't feel very good. But if you're trying to put on that weight, this is a huge tip. I think it's just an idea that I had one time, like, wait a second. I was like going through shorts or something, and I saw like this guy, I'm pretty sure his house happened. He makes these really calorie-dense meals. They're crazy. And I was like, what if I just make some of these? Like, I feel like I'll gain a bunch of weight. And it worked. But, you know, just like I said, don't eat too many. And then to be hungry for a big meal like that, you need to take a big break in between a meal, more than you usually do. So you get really hungry for it, maybe push it a little longer. And then you might feel a little sick if you don't eat. And the tip for getting over that and being ready for the big meal is you eat a small appetizer 10 or 15 minutes before you eat your big meal. This gets your stomach ready, and while you're eating the meal, make sure you drink a bunch of water, but not too much during the meal, because it'll make you feel more full. But, you know, you drink a lot of water after the meal throughout the day. Don't go overboard with it, but drink a lot of water. Make sure you do that. And that was the second tip there, is take the big breaks, and then the appetizer 10 or 15 minutes before that really big meal. So that sort of wraps it up. And that was a good thing to bring up at the end of drinking a lot of water. My uncle on a phone call, I was telling him I was eating a bunch of food and I was actually gaining some, you know, building muscle, gaining weight. And he said, oh, that's great, but make sure you drink a bunch of water if you're eating a bunch of food. And he was saying, like, you know, you'll get kidney stones if you don't do that. And I was like, oh, okay. So he's like, and he kept, it was like a 5-minute phone call. And basically the entire time he basically was just saying, drink water, drink water, drink water. And I was trying to like get off the topic, like, okay, I heard you. And he just kept saying, make sure you drink water. So it's really important. So I'll pass it on to you. Make sure you drink the water. And yeah, it's basically a balance of doing things that make you really hungry, which are not eating and exercising. And then, you know, eating a bunch of food and exercising, building that muscle, having all the building blocks to do so. And then if you want to push the envelope and go past everything, the dairy goes a long way. So it looks like I'm at the end. Take care. Goodbye. Thank you very much.